Welcome to Stoic Soul Legacy. If you're ready to upgrade your mindset and unlock your best version, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this channel with someone who needs a little push today. Let's grow, let's rise, and let's stay motivated. Together, the world doesn't reward the loudest voice or the kindest heart. It rewards the one who learns how to think clearly while others panic, the one who plans in silence while others chase noise. You don't rise by accident. You rise because you understand what moves people, and more importantly, what moves you. Strategy isn't just a skill, it's a way of seeing. It's recognizing that control doesn't begin with power over others. It begins with mastering the storm within. And that's where most people fail. Not because they're weak, but because they've never been taught how to build a mind that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't fold. There's a reason the Stoics spoke so often of clarity, detachment, and self-discipline, because the battle is never truly outside you. It's always internal first. And if you can win there, if you can anchor yourself in reason when others drown in emotion, the rest of the world becomes a board you calmly navigate. If you're the kind of person who's done being pulled by chaos, who's ready to start designing a life with clarity, control, and purpose, then please subscribe for you, because every step forward is a quiet rebellion against everything trying to keep you small. True strategy doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention or announce itself with noise. It begins in the quiet corners of your mind, where no one is watching, where no one is praising you, where no one even knows you're working. That silence, the one most people are uncomfortable sitting with, is exactly where clarity begins to grow. When you allow yourself to sit still, to observe without needing to react, you begin to see what others miss. Most people spend their lives trying to be seen, trying to be heard, rushing to act without knowing why. But the strategist moves differently. You don't act just because something triggers you. You pause, you examine, you wait until the truth reveals itself, not through noise, but through pattern. And in a world that moves too fast to think, the one who slows down becomes the one who controls the pace of everything else. You don't just react to what life throws at you. You study it. You study people, their words, their habits, their inconsistencies. And in doing so, you start to understand them better than they understand themselves. Power isn't always about force. Sometimes it's about becoming so aware that your very presence unsettles people because they know you see what they're trying to hide. But this kind of perception doesn't come from rushing or from noise. It's built in the dark, in the quiet, when you're sitting with your thoughts while everyone else is busy distracting themselves. That's the blueprint. The world wants you loud and impulsive. But real control comes from being the one person who knows exactly when to speak and when to stay silent. And when you begin to train your mind this way, you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You stop responding to every opinion, every provocation, every minor inconvenience, because you realize what deserves your attention is rare. What requires a response is even rarer. The strategist understands this. They know that not everything is worth addressing. Not every battle is worth fighting. Because when your mind is clear, you don't just see the fight in front of you, you see 5 moves ahead. You think like a sculptor, not a brawler. Every word, every gesture, every decision is deliberate. You're not in the game to play harder, you're here to play smarter. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from knowing your next 10 moves before you make the first one. It makes you calm, because nothing surprises you. It makes you disciplined, because you don't need to prove anything. It makes you feared, because people can't predict you. They can't rattle you. They don't know what you're thinking, and that unknown becomes your shield. And when you move, it's not rushed, it's precise. like the way a storm gathers before it strikes, silent but certain. You don't chase momentum, you build it. You don't grab at power, you design it. This design begins within, not with domination over others, but with mastery over your own impulses, fears, and distractions. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." That calm doesn't appear magically. It's forged through discipline. It's the result of countless moments when you chose to think instead of speak, to wait instead of rush, to watch instead of react. And when you live that way long enough, you start to feel a shift. You're not the same person anymore. You're not trying to keep up. You're deciding the pace. You're not trying to impress. You're focused on impact. Most people want control, but they've never taken the time to study what control really is. It's not the loudest person in the room. It's the one who understands what everyone else is missing. The one who knows what motivates people, what scares them, what they'll deny. And to get there, you have to be willing to spend time in that mental space no one else wants to visit, where nothing is certain, where patience is tested, where silence is your only companion. But if you can stay there long enough, something changes. You start to see the world less emotionally, more structurally, less about what should be and more about what is. You trade comfort for vision. And in that exchange you gain something few ever will, command of your own reality. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." The strategist is the one who sees that order, not just outside, but inside themselves. They don't ignore chaos, they decipher it. They don't run from confusion, they translate it. And through that process, they sharpen their awareness like a blade. Eventually, you reach a place where your calm becomes unsettling to others, where your ability to stay grounded when others panic becomes your leverage. That's not arrogance, that's earned composure. You begin to trust your instincts, not because they're wild guesses, but because they've been trained in solitude, in repetition, in failure, and in study. You're not chasing certainty anymore. You've built it within, and from that foundation, you operate. Every move you make carries weight, not because it's loud, but because it's intentional. And in a world built on distraction, the person who moves with intention becomes a force. Not because they're feared, but because they are respected. Not because they dominate others, but because they've mastered themselves. That's what the silent blueprint of power really is. It's not a checklist, it's not a tactic. It's a way of seeing, a way of being, a way of training your mind to function in a world that wants you emotional, impulsive, and lost. But you're not here to be swept away by the noise. You're here to be the one who sees clearly, acts wisely, and builds slowly. Because when your foundation is rooted in silence, in strategy, in deep understanding, you don't need to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks long before your words ever do. Emotion is loud. It rises like a wave, fast, overwhelming, and urgent. It demands a response, pushes for immediate action, insists that something be said, something be done. But that urgency is not truth. It's not clarity. It's a test. And those who don't recognize that are constantly led by what they feel instead of what they know. The strategist, the warrior, they understand this difference. They feel the same storm that others do. They just don't become it. They don't let the noise dictate the movement, because power doesn't lie in having no emotion. It lies in having the discipline not to be ruled by it. To live strategically is to walk into every situation already aware that emotion will try to hijack you. It will try to blur your vision, rush your choices, cloud your judgment. That's why preparation matters. That's why stillness is practiced, so that when emotion shows up, it finds no seat at the table. You acknowledge it, you don't deny it, but you never hand it the reins. Because the moment you do, your power becomes scattered. You lose the ability to see clearly. You forget what the long game looks like. And in the space where you should be moving with purpose, you're reacting with confusion. The Stoics never claimed to be unfeeling. They never sought to cut out the heart. What they mastered was the ability to choose which feelings deserved action. You may not control what triggers the emotion, but you always control what you do with it. If someone insults you, you don't need to respond. If a situation feels tense, you don't need to force clarity. If fear shows up, you don't need to run. The disciplined mind knows when to act and when to sit still. And sometimes, silence is the most strategic response you can offer. People often think strength looks like force, like intensity, but the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who look calm in chaos. They're the ones who don't argue just to defend themselves. They don't explain themselves just to feel understood. They don't perform to prove their worth. They move with such clarity that explanation becomes unnecessary. That kind of presence doesn't come from ego. It comes from emotional control. When you no longer seek to escape the discomfort of feeling, you become unshakable. You can look someone in the eye while your heart is racing and still speak with precision. You can feel insulted and still choose to hold your ground without retaliation. You can be scared and still move forward with intention. You've probably experienced it yourself. The moment you snapped and regretted it, the time you rushed into something because you were afraid to wait, the apology you made after realizing you acted out of emotion, not reason. Those aren't failures, they're lessons, and they point to something important. That power without emotional discipline is unstable. It wobbles, it leaks. But when you begin to practice this awareness, when you start catching your reactions, noticing your triggers, sitting with your discomfort, you start to reclaim control, not just over situations, but over yourself. And once you do that, everything changes. Conversations slow down, reactions feel optional. You become aware of the energy in the room, but not swallowed by it. You see people trying to provoke you, and instead of getting drawn in, you observe. You watch the patterns. You collect information. And then when the time is right, you move, not from emotion, but from clarity. That movement hits different. It doesn't just get a result, it earns respect. Because everyone else is still caught in the tide of their feelings, and you've already stepped onto solid ground. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being your feelings. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When your emotions are unconscious, unexamined and unchecked, you end up building your life around them. You choose partners based on fear of being alone. You take jobs based on fear of failure. You argue because of pride, withdraw because of shame, run because of guilt. But when you bring them into the light, when you study what they're saying, when you understand where they come from, they stop leading, they start informing, and from there you can build something solid. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That truth is timeless, because no matter how chaotic the world becomes, no matter how unpredictable people can be, your power begins the moment you choose your reaction. That choice is your edge. That discipline is your freedom. And once you've built that within, no one can take it from you. Not their opinions, not their approval, not their attacks. You move through the world like someone who knows what they're doing, someone who doesn't flinch, someone who sees clearly. And when others lose their balance, you remain centered, because you've trained for this, not in fire, but in stillness, not in panic, but in discipline. And that kind of strength doesn't fade, it deepens, it sharpens, it becomes who you are. People often confuse chaos with power. They see loudness, quick reactions, big movements, and assume there must be strength behind them. But that's not strength, it's noise. And noise is what the world trains you to respond to. But the warrior knows better. Real power doesn't come from how much space you take up. It comes from how still you can remain when everything around you tries to shake you. There's something deeply unnerving about the kind of person who doesn't flinch, someone who can sit in discomfort, in tension, and not be moved unless they decide to move. That's not passivity, that's command. You see it sometimes, people who walk into a room and instantly alter the energy without saying a word. It's not because they're intimidating, it's because their calm is loud. It sends a message that says, I am not here to be swayed, I am here to stay centered. And that kind of energy pulls attention without asking for it. Most people think being a warrior is about how hard you hit, but it's really about how stable you remain. It's about training your presence to be so still, so grounded, that others instinctively second-guess any attempt to challenge it. Because they feel what you've mastered internally, even before you speak. And this isn't something you inherit, it's something you build, through discipline, through hardship, through choosing again and again not to be baited into reaction. It's easy to yell, easy to respond, easy to get pulled into every battle you're invited to. But the warrior's calm is built in the decision to let 10 provocations pass without engaging, because you know not every conflict deserves your attention. You don't just protect your peace, you weaponize it. You let it create uncertainty in others. They can't tell what you're thinking. They can't read your face. They can't pull you out of position. And that unreadability becomes your shield. Stoicism isn't about suppression. It's about expression through discipline. Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. That's what the warrior's calm recognizes. The situation is never what breaks you. It's how you internalize it. And once you understand that, you stop being reactive to every sharp word, every delay, every misunderstanding. You start observing instead of absorbing. And from that place, your actions become sharper, cleaner, more impactful, because they're not cluttered by confusion or ego. A true warrior knows that real strength lies in precision, not performance. And when your internal state is calm, your movements become deliberate. You don't overextend. You don't rush. You wait for the right moment, and when it comes, you don't hesitate. That's the difference between dominance and desperation. Desperation moves frantically. Dominance moves with timing. Calm allows you to see that timing. It gives you the clarity to strike once, cleanly, and walk away without the need to prove anything further. Carl Jung once said, even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. The word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. That's a reminder that calm doesn't mean blind optimism or emotional detachment. It means balance. It means being aware of what you feel but not enslaved by it. It means knowing the darkness exists, but not letting it define your identity. The warrior's calm is not about pretending bad things don't happen. It's about knowing you will not be broken by them when they do. There's a kind of psychological gravity that forms when you walk through life without the constant need to explain, defend, or impress. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've chosen what to care about. It means your time and energy are not freely available. They're earned. That energy, when others sense it, makes them pause. It creates distance. Not because you're pushing people away, but because your energy communicates boundaries. And those boundaries, rooted in calm, demand respect without saying a word. Aristotle believed that excellence is a habit, not an act. And that's exactly what the warrior's calm becomes, a habit a daily choice to remain grounded in a world addicted to noise. When others are rushing to react, you are breathing deeply. When the moment heats up, you cool it down, not for show, but because you know that your strength doesn't need to be loud to be real. The discipline it takes to stay calm in high-pressure moments is one of the rarest forms of mastery. And when you carry it long enough, it stops being something you have to think about. It becomes who you are. Imagine how much energy you could save by not being pulled into every emotional current. Imagine how many mistakes you could avoid if you just paused, breathed, and responded when you were ready, not when your feelings told you to. That's the advantage. And over time, it compounds. You become more efficient, more respected, more trusted, because people know you won't spiral, you won't overreact, you'll think, you'll listen, and when you do speak, it matters. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Calm is not the absence of adversity, it's proof that you've learned how to face it without folding. And that proof becomes your presence. It becomes the thing people notice before you even speak. It becomes the reason people trust you in chaos and look to you in crisis. So when you carry calm, don't second-guess it. Don't shrink it to make others more comfortable. Understand what it communicates, understand what it protects, and understand what it builds. The world doesn't need more reaction. It needs more reflection. It needs people who can stand in the fire and not become it. People who can feel the weight of conflict and still walk with grace. That's the warrior. Not the loudest one in the room, but the most grounded. The one who walks with silence and leaves others echoing in the space they no longer control. There's a reason the most powerful minds in history withdrew before they moved. Because clarity doesn't come from noise, it comes from stillness. And in a world where everyone is trying to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, stepping away feels unnatural. But that's exactly why it works. Intentional isolation isn't about running from the world. It's about rising above its distractions. It's a deliberate pause, a conscious separation from everything pulling at your attention, so you can finally hear your own thoughts again. You don't find vision in the crowd. You find compromise. You don't find yourself surrounded by constant voices. You lose yourself trying to match them. But when you step away, not out of rejection but out of purpose, something shifts. Your vision sharpens. Your mind calms. And suddenly, everything you were chasing begins to come into focus. Isolation is not emptiness, it's refinement. You don't need to constantly announce your progress. You don't need to document every step or share every win. Some things grow best in silence. Some victories are sharpened in shadows. And the person who learns to thrive in solitude learns to stop relying on validation. They begin to generate momentum from within. That's real independence. Not just doing things on your own, but becoming someone who doesn't need the world to tell them who they are. Solitude teaches you to be your own source of focus, motivation, and truth. And once you've tasted that kind of power, you stop seeking approval from people who don't even know where they're going. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that kind of becoming doesn't happen in crowds. It doesn't happen in noise. It happens when you walk away long enough to remember what matters. And in that quiet space, you begin to separate yourself from the chaos of the world. Not because you're better, but because you're building something deeper. When everyone is busy reacting, you're still. When everyone's lost in trends, you're returning to principle. When everyone's looking outward, you're turning inward, not to escape, but to sharpen. You train your focus like a blade. You learn to protect it. You learn to direct it. And eventually it becomes so sharp, so intentional, that nothing unnecessary can survive your attention anymore. Solitude is the architect of depth. It's the place where shallow goals die and meaningful ones are born. You stop chasing things just because others are chasing them. You stop accepting the life handed to you by the crowd and start crafting the life you actually want. There's power in that. There's peace in that. And there's responsibility in that too, because once you know your values, once you've clarified your vision, you can't pretend you don't. The silence leaves no excuses. It hands you yourself. And you either accept that challenge or you return to the noise hoping to forget. But the one who stays with it, who wrestles with the solitude, begins to build a life that can't be shaken by opinions, distractions, or temporary discomfort. Intentional isolation also trains resilience, because when you stop depending on others for stimulation, for direction, for permission, you build the kind of mental strength that doesn't crumble when you're ignored, misunderstood, or underestimated. You don't panic when things go quiet. You use that silence. You create in it. You rise in it. The world teaches you to fear being alone because isolation threatens everything superficial. But solitude, when chosen, becomes your advantage. It's the difference between reacting emotionally and responding strategically. It's the shift from external performance to internal alignment. And in that alignment, your pace changes, your standards rise, your vision extends beyond the moment. Seneca once said, "If you want to be loved, love yourself first." That begins in solitude. That begins when you're willing to sit with your own mind long enough to understand its strengths and challenge its weaknesses. When you do that, when you face yourself fully, the world stops being so loud. You see through it. You start noticing how much of it is distraction wrapped in urgency. And when you have clarity, you stop being manipulated by appearances. You stop engaging in meaningless battles. You conserve your energy. You refine your circle. And you learn to create without applause. Isolation teaches you to become selective about people, ideas, inputs, and energy. You stop allowing chaos into your world just because it's common. You stop responding to people who haven't earned your attention, and you stop sacrificing your values just to feel included. That inclusion, if it requires you to shrink, is not worth it. Because once you've experienced what it feels like to be at peace with yourself, no crowd can replace it. You realize that solitude isn't a weakness. It's a filter. It shows you who you are without the noise of the world shaping your identity. It shows you which goals are truly yours, and it gives you the space to pursue them with precision. Epictetus reminds us, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. And what is freedom really, if not the ability to be alone and unshaken, to not fear your own mind, to not need the opinions of others to validate your truth, to be so grounded in who you are that silence isn't empty, it's productive. That's what intentional isolation gives you. Not distance from life, but depth within it. Not withdrawal from others, but reconnection with yourself. And once you learn how to cultivate it, you stop fearing loneliness, because you're never really alone when you've made peace with your own presence. So step away, not to vanish, but to remember, not to escape, but to rebuild. Because when you return with something rare, clarity. And clarity cuts through the noise. It speaks without shouting. It moves without hesitation. It leads without needing to follow. The strategist knows this. The warrior lives it. And the one who trains in silence walks into any room already holding the advantage. Detachment isn't the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of feeling. It's not that you don't care. It's that you no longer let what you care about control you. There's a quiet power in being able to stand still while everything around you tries to pull at your identity, your attention, your worth. Detachment doesn't mean walking away from life. It means walking through it with clarity. You stop chasing because you start realizing how little of what you thought you needed actually defines who you are. And the moment you stop trying to grip everything tightly, you stop losing yourself in the process. There's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop trying to manage everything outside of you. That peace doesn't come from pretending not to care. It comes from being so deeply rooted in who you are that no rejection, no distance, no silence can unmake you. You still love, you still give, you still feel. But you stop depending on the outcome. You don't ask others to complete you. You don't need them to agree with you. You don't collapse when they leave, because you've stopped placing your sense of self in their hands. That is detachment, not because you don't value connection, but because you finally learned how to connect without losing yourself. Seneca said, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." Detachment is that power. It allows you to walk away from chaos without explanation. It allows you to feel desire without becoming desperate. It allows you to enjoy what you have without fearing its loss. And that's rare, because most people live from a place of clinging to people who don't respect them, clinging to roles they've outgrown, clinging to outcomes that were never in their control to begin with. They call it loyalty or passion or commitment. But really, it's fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of not being seen. But when you start to practice detachment, those fears begin to fade, because you stop seeing loss as a reflection of your value. You stop giving weight to the opinions of people who haven't earned your vulnerability. You begin to understand that what stays will stay, and what leaves was never truly aligned. You become patient with change. You stop demanding closure. You stop forcing clarity. You let life unfold without trying to squeeze it into your expectations. That doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you wise. And wisdom, by nature, is quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't attach itself to everything that feels good in the moment. It waits. It watches. It allows. And from that stillness, it decides. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." That's exactly why detachment matters. The more tightly you hold on, the more power you give away. The more you try to control people, outcomes, or timing, the more you suffer. But when you loosen your grip, when you breathe and allow, you create space for growth, for truth, for freedom. Detachment gives you freedom because it removes your dependence on outcomes. And without that dependence, you begin to act from a place of clarity instead of fear. You stop manipulating. You stop trying to win people over. You stop performing just to be chosen. You speak your truth, not to convince, but to express. You show up, not to impress, but to be real. And if that's not enough for someone, you don't bend. You bless their path and keep walking. That's strength, not because it's easy, but because it's clean. It comes from a place of knowing that peace isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you stop giving away. You become lighter when you detach. You stop carrying expectations that were never yours to begin with. You stop chasing what's running from you. You stop needing constant reassurance to feel secure. And what's left is a life that's quiet, steady, rooted. A life where your value isn't a question, where your joy isn't dependent on attention, where your energy isn't drained by things that no longer serve your evolution. That's what detachment builds. Not isolation, not indifference, but sovereignty. You become emotionally self-sufficient, not so you can walk alone, but so that you can walk with others without losing your path. And here's the paradox. The less you need, the more you attract, because the world is drawn to people who don't chase. There's gravity in emotional independence. There's intrigue in calm confidence. There's power in someone who loves fully, gives freely, and yet holds nothing too tightly. That energy doesn't beg. It doesn't prove. It just is. And that kind of presence reshapes the room. It speaks louder than words because it isn't trying to be loud. It's simply aligned. Marcus Aurelius said, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." That's what detachment teaches you: to love without owning, to give without expecting, to live without clinging. And in that space, everything becomes clearer. The people who stay feel lighter. The goals you pursue feel cleaner. The life you build feels truer. Because it's not built on trying to hold everything in place. It's built on trust. Trust that you can handle loss. Trust that you can survive change. Trust that you don't need everything to go your way in order to be okay. And when you carry that trust long enough, you become someone others can trust too. Because they sense it. They feel the steadiness in your presence. They recognize the difference between someone who is whole and someone who is still looking to be filled. And it's not about superiority, it's about responsibility. You stop asking others to regulate your emotions. You stop handing over your peace for temporary pleasure. And you stop treating relationships as lifeboats. You're no longer sinking, you're swimming. The truth is, detachment gives you back to yourself. And when you live from that place, everything around you starts to align with who you truly are. Not who you've been trying to be to make others stay. You stop needing the story to go a certain way. You stop needing closure from people who couldn't offer it. You stop needing to be understood in order to understand yourself. And what remains is strength, not the kind that flexes, but the kind that holds steady when the rest of the world moves like a tide. Because when you are no longer moved by every wave, you become the current. You don't resist life. You move with it from a place of freedom, from a place of presence, from a place that cannot be shaken by what comes or what goes. And that is the quiet, grounded, untouchable strength of true detachment. Control isn't about dominance. It's not about barking orders or bending others to your will. It's about discipline, quiet, deliberate discipline that starts from the inside and expands outward. That's the part most people miss. They try to control everything around them, the pace of their career, the behavior of others, the outcomes of situations. But when something doesn't go their way, even something small, they spiral. Their emotions explode, their focus vanishes, their words betray them. And that's the contradiction. You can't command anything outside of you until you've mastered what's going on within you. If you can't control your tongue in anger, your attention under pressure, or your emotions when you're tested, then what are you really in control of? Control begins not with what you do, but with how you think. It's about what you allow into your mind and what you allow your mind to do with it. Most people run on reaction. They hear something and immediately respond. They feel discomfort and instantly try to escape it. But control means space. Space between the stimulus and the response. Space where reflection happens, where choice is made. That space is power, and most never find it because they're too used to moving without thinking. But once you begin to cultivate that space, by slowing down, observing, pausing, your decisions shift. Your actions become intentional. Your energy becomes more focused and less scattered. You become someone who moves because it's time, not because something provoked you. Think about how many times you've reacted and regretted it. How many times your mouth moved faster than your mind. How many times you gave away your energy just because someone pushed the right button. That's what emotional control protects you from. It's not about shutting down your feelings. It's about guiding them. It's about being aware of your state and refusing to be hijacked by it. And that applies to everything. Anger, anxiety, impatience, even excitement. You learn to manage your highs the same way you manage your lows. Because consistency is what builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just a quote to admire, it's a standard to live by. Because when your mind becomes your ally instead of your master, the rest of your life starts aligning with purpose. You begin to reclaim time that used to be lost to distractions. You begin to protect energy that used to be wasted on drama. You begin to silence thoughts that used to scream for attention, and people notice. They may not understand it, but they feel it. They sense that you're not easily moved, that you think before you speak, that you act when others would react. And in a world addicted to chaos, that kind of stability becomes magnetic. Control also means knowing when not to act. That's the part that separates the wise from the impulsive, because there are moments when saying nothing is the highest form of intelligence, when walking away is the strongest form of resistance, when pausing is the most powerful move on the board. The world will test you constantly. It will poke at your insecurities, tempt your ego, challenge your boundaries. And every time you respond from a place of grounded control, you rise above the test. Not because you won, but because you didn't lose yourself in the process. Control isn't loud. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It's not the person pounding on the table or barking instructions. Real control is subtle. It's the one who speaks last, listens most, and doesn't reveal everything. It's the one who walks into a room without needing to prove a thing, because they know who they are. They've trained for stillness. And that kind of quiet control makes people curious. It makes them uncomfortable, because they realize they can't predict you, they can't provoke you, they can't pull you into the current they're stuck in. That kind of detachment, anchored in self-mastery, is not just rare, it's powerful. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that's what we all want in some form. Freedom. Freedom from our triggers, freedom from old habits, freedom from the constant pull of everything outside us. But freedom doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from engagement, from noticing your impulses and choosing not to obey them, from watching your thoughts and letting some of them pass without turning them into action, from choosing the long term over the short term, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. And here's the truth, control takes time. You don't wake up grounded. You build it, day by day, thought by thought, reaction by reaction. You'll mess up. You'll say things you didn't mean. You'll fall back into old habits. But every time you catch yourself, you grow. Every time you reflect, you realign. Every time you return to yourself after losing control, you make that return faster. And over time, that becomes your baseline. Not perfection, but awareness. Not emotionlessness, but steadiness. When you control your attention, you control your mind. When you control your mind, you control your energy. And when you control your energy, you control your life. That's the chain. That's the foundation. Not controlling others, not manipulating outcomes, but mastering the one thing that's always been yours, your own state. Because once you build control within, no one can take it from you. They can try to disturb your peace, but they won't succeed. They can try to provoke you, but they'll only be met with silence. They can try to define you, but they'll only end up revealing themselves. And that's when you know you've won. Not when you've defeated others, but when you've risen above the need to. Control isn't about holding tight. It's about letting go of what doesn't serve you. It's about protecting what matters. It's about moving with precision, not pressure. And when you live that way long enough, you stop reacting to the world and start shaping it. You stop being a product of chaos and start becoming the architect of order. That's what control is. Not force, not fear. Just quiet power that begins with you and extends into everything you touch. Most people wait for change to force their hand. They wait until things collapse, until time runs out, until there's no other option but to adjust. But by then, the advantage is gone. The true strategist doesn't wait for chaos to arrive. They anticipate it. They watch patterns. They read the undercurrents. They train their mind to bend before the pressure demands it. Because they know that adaptation isn't about reaction, it's about design. And when you learn to design your response before the world demands it, you move with a kind of quiet speed that's hard to track and impossible to stop. Adaptation isn't noise. It isn't frantic or dramatic. It's internal first. It's the conversation you have with yourself when things shift unexpectedly and you choose not to panic, but to adjust. You don't betray who you are. You sharpen who you are. You evolve the form, not the foundation. And that's the difference between those who remain solid under pressure and those who shatter. The untrained mind resists change and calls it loyalty. The strategist embraces change and calls it intelligence. Because staying the same in a world that constantly moves is not strength. It's denial. And denial is what blinds people to opportunity until it passes them by. There's a natural fear that comes with change. That's human. But fear is only dangerous when it becomes resistance. When you believe you're losing yourself by evolving, when you think every adjustment is a compromise, that's when growth dies. But the truth is, you don't abandon your values when you adapt. You express them more effectively. You stop clinging to methods that no longer work. You stop worshipping outdated identities. You stop performing patterns that no longer align with who you've become. Adapting means updating yourself, not to impress the world, but to move through it more wisely. Seneca once said, "Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant." And that's the essence of this. If you resist the natural flow of change, you get dragged by it. You break under it. You suffer through it. But if you meet it willingly, if you accept that change is not the enemy but the next teacher, you begin to harness it. You use it. You stay ahead of it. You stop waiting for the world to decide your next move. You choose it yourself. That's not weakness. That's strategic strength, the kind that survives what others crumble under. Adaptation also requires self-honesty, brutal honesty. You can't evolve if you're still pretending the old way is working. You can't shift if your ego is too attached to how things used to be. That's where most people get stuck. Not because they don't have the capacity to change, but because they've tied their worth to outdated methods, fading relationships, past versions of themselves. And letting go feels like failure. But it isn't. It's clarity. It's realigning your path with where you're going, not where you've been. And if you can do that, if you can let go of what no longer fits, you make space for something that does. Carl Jung once wrote, "What did you do as a child that made the hours pass like minutes? Therein lies the key to your earthly pursuits." That's a question that invites you to reconnect with the raw, changing energy of who you were before the world told you how to behave. That's where adaptability begins, not in the mind that's been trained to fear change, but in the spirit that once moved freely. To reclaim that, you have to strip away the conditioning that says security comes from sameness. You have to remember that your spirit was always evolving, always experimenting, always becoming. Returning to that state, not childish but fluid, is how you begin to trust your ability to transform. The more you practice adaptation, the less attached you become to being right. You stop needing to defend old views. You start seeking better ones. You stop fearing being misunderstood. You start valuing accuracy over comfort. That doesn't mean you're inconsistent. It means you're honest. Honest enough to say, what worked before might not work now. And that honesty opens doors. It pulls you into environments, relationships, ideas that are better suited for who you're becoming. It doesn't mean the old was wrong, it means it's done, and you're ready for what's next. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." Adaptation gives you power because it gives you choice. You're no longer trapped in one way of thinking, one way of living, one way of responding. You have options. You have range. You become someone who can walk into any environment and adjust, not to blend in, but to be effective. That's what survival looks like when it's infused with strategy. You don't just last, you lead. Quietly, precisely, powerfully. And there's a freedom in this kind of movement. You're no longer boxed in by who you were last year, last month, or even yesterday. You don't cling to consistency for the sake of identity. You hold values, not masks. You walk with truth, not outdated roles. You move with intent, not habit. And as a result, you remain alive, fully alive, in a world that rewards sleepwalkers and punishes change. But you don't shrink to fit what's fading. You expand to meet what's coming. Adaptation is not betrayal. It's clarity in motion. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind of intelligence that speaks in action, not explanation. And the more you live this way, the more you realize survival is not about clinging to what was. It's about stepping into what's needed, fully, freely, without fear. That's not just how you stay in the game. That's how you write your own rules. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It enters quietly, fully formed, fully centered, and everything else adjusts around it. That's the energy of someone who's done the work, the deep, internal work of self-mastery, not for show, but for truth. A king doesn't need to be loud because he's already aligned with something greater than ego. His movements are minimal because his presence is complete. He doesn't win by overpowering others. He wins by overpowering the chaos within himself first. And from that internal architecture, a structure so calm and so precise, everything else begins to respond in kind. People often think victory looks like noise. They imagine it's about outshouting, outshining, outperforming. But that's just effort without direction. That's motion without control. True victory is still. It's efficient. It's clean. And when you witness it, you feel it before you see it. Because the strongest minds don't need to explain themselves. They operate with a rhythm that doesn't ask for permission or approval. It just moves. On time, on purpose, untouched. That's the final ascent. When you no longer chase validation. When you stop needing recognition. When you build such a clear internal compass that you move through life not louder, but sharper. This ascent isn't a performance. It's not theatrical. It's quiet revolution. It's the decision to lead with discipline, to execute without applause, and to hold your line without seeking validation. You don't need a crowd to feel complete. You don't need opposition to feel strong. You've already made peace with your solitude. You've already mastered your silence. And now, you don't show up to prove anything. You show up because your very existence is a result of relentless refinement. There's nothing left to shout about when you've become the living embodiment of focus. To win without noise means you don't let the world pull you off rhythm. You don't respond to bait. You don't engage with what's beneath your discipline. You observe it. You calculate. And when you act, you do so with such intention that it feels inevitable. You're no longer reactive. You are architectural. You design your responses. You place your time with purpose. And you value your energy like a rare currency. You've learned that not everything needs your effort, your explanation, or your reaction. Because silence, when rooted in clarity, is more powerful than 1,000 words misused in haste. Seneca wrote, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." And that's exactly why this level of power is so rare. Most people are too distracted to reach for it, too scattered, too invested in external noise to ever build the kind of order that commands attention in silence. But you've chosen something different. You've chosen presence over performance. And now you're no longer shaped by the world. You shape the space you walk into, not because you dominate it, but because you no longer need to compete with it. That shift, from needing attention to commanding it without trying, marks a change few ever reach. It means your power is no longer dependent on outcome. It's not built on whether you win today or tomorrow. It's built on how you move, how you think, how you endure. Your presence carries the weight of every choice you've made in silence, every time you turned away from distraction, every moment you chose stillness over spectacle. And that accumulation, those quiet, consistent investments in who you are, create a magnetic force that others feel, even if they don't understand it. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And that's what this level of living is. It's the awakened state, the one where you're no longer dreaming about power, you're embodying it. Not because you took it from someone else, but because you claimed what was always yours, your focus, your presence, your control. This is the kind of awakening that doesn't make noise, but it changes the atmosphere, the kind that shifts the temperature of a room without saying a word. Because what's built in silence echoes louder than anything shouted in haste. To win like a king is to lead yourself first. Before you influence anyone else, you've held yourself to a higher standard. You've learned how to delay gratification, how to manage your emotions, how to stay composed when the weak would explode. You've chosen strategy over comfort, purpose over popularity, and you've built the kind of resilience that doesn't break under pressure. It calibrates. You've become a mirror to the untrained. They see your stillness and wonder how you're not shaken. They feel your detachment and question their own need for noise. That's the beauty of quiet power. It reflects back everything others haven't yet mastered in themselves. This final ascent isn't about reaching a peak where nothing challenges you. It's about becoming someone who moves so well under pressure that challenges just feel like puzzles, not battles. You no longer fight your way through life. You navigate it. You design your moves in silence. And when the world tries to disrupt your pace, you stay grounded. Not because it's easy, but because you've trained for it. You've stripped away the unnecessary. You've outgrown the noise, and now your life is shaped by discipline, not reaction, by design, not demand. And so you walk differently, not faster, not louder, but clearer. You've made the quiet your strength. You've made stillness your advantage. And now the world doesn't question your value. It adjusts to it, not because you asked, but because you became undeniable. That's how you win without noise. That's how you lead without force. That's how you rise without needing to be seen rising. This is not the path of ease, but it is the path of kings, quiet, steady, sharp, and absolutely unshakable. You don't need to raise your voice when your presence already speaks. You don't need to prove yourself when your discipline has already built the proof. The world bends quietly for those who master themselves first. So walk with clarity, move with calm, and let your silence carry the weight of everything you've become. Watch one of the videos on your screen to keep sharpening the mind that cannot be moved. And thank you, truly, for being a part of Stoic Journal.